Welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's workshop on building an effective benefit communications plan. I'm Guy Westermeyer, the president at Westcom. Westcom is an agency that specializes in benefit communications.
And I'm Melissa Cotterill, Executive Vice President at Westcom. Today, we're going to walk you through why you should create a strategic benefits communication plan, how to create that plan, and different ways you can personalize and segment your messaging.
So before we dive into building the plan, we thought it might help to give a little context as to why we believe this plan is important. Also, some of these stats and the information we're going to share in this section might be useful for you as you build a case internally as to why you need a plan. This statement that you see on the screen is something that we see play out in conversation after conversation. And depending on the size of your organization, it might not be millions of dollars, but this concept of you're investing in benefits, you're investing in your employees, and those employees don't always understand the benefits or see the value is something that we do hear over and over. And it's not just us that hears that. There's data and research that backs up this feeling. The lack of benefit knowledge is something that we see across the industry. Voya did a research report, and it showed that 1/3 of the employees did not fully understand their benefits. Honestly, I would believe that number to be a little higher. We also saw in their report that 66% of employees wish they had a better understanding and were more informed about benefits throughout the year. And this matters because better knowledge about benefits leads to better outcomes. MetLife does a research report every year, and we find it fascinating, the information that they are able to glean and gather. And from the most recent study, it showed that half of the employees say that understanding their benefits would make them more loyal to their employee. And also that employees who are more confident in the knowledge about their benefits are 16% more likely to be engaged at work. So we know that employees don't understand. We know that employees want to understand and that it's going to impact them, and also that it's going to lead to better outcomes. Gallup's 2023 report showed that. It showed that low employee engagement is costing organizations roughly $8.98 trillion in lost productivity. That's a large number, which is kind of hard to fathom. But it also showed that if you were able to improve worker engagement, that increases productivity, and that also increases profitability. So we know that if we elevate our benefit communications, it's going to lead to better outcomes for your employees, but also better outcomes for the business. We see frequently cost savings. Healthier employees cost less. We see a really effective benefit communications plan and program can lead to better recruitment, but also retention, and better utilization across the benefit programs. It's for this reason that we're really passionate about this topic. Melissa is now going to walk us through building the plan.
Thanks, Guy. We would encourage you to follow along by downloading the templates that we've prepared. You can scan this QR code or follow the URL, print out the documents, and follow along as we go. Today, we're going to talk through the various steps for creating a communications plan. We'll talk about goals and objectives, key messages, understanding your audience, understanding your channels, how to map out a calendar, and strategies for personalization and segmentation. First, let's talk about goals and objectives. There are 3 main reasons why you need a strategic benefits communication plan. First, you want to help employees feel valued and engaged. Secondly, there are things that you need your audience to do. You need them to take action on something. And third, you want to drive behavior or drive engagement into your programs and resources. For the purposes of this exercise, we've created a fictitious company that we're calling Sigma Enterprise. Sigma has about 5,000 employees, both a mix of wired and non-wired, meaning some that sit behind a computer all day and some who do not. They're located in multiple sites across the country, and they have a mix of office and manufacturing positions. Sigma has 4 main goals and objectives for the year. First, they want to increase annual physicals and screenings by implementing a new HSA incentive plan. Secondly, they want to communicate effectively throughout open enrollment. Third, they want to help reduce avoidable ER costs that are hitting their plan by educating their employees about alternative care options. And fourth, they want to increase participation in their 401k program. Our first activity today is for you to think about your goals and objectives. Using the worksheets that you downloaded earlier, create a list of the top things that you want to communicate in the year ahead. Think about those deadline-driven events, general education that you want to provide, changes or new programs that you're introducing, cost-saving options, and ways to improve well-being. Whatever those goals and objectives are for your company, list those out on your worksheet.
So now that you have identified some goals and objectives, we're now going to start defining the key messages. When you're defining the key messages, there's a few questions that we would suggest you consider. The first one would be, what does the audience need to know? Another would be, what do they want to know? And also, why is this topic important? You could also think about what's in it for the employee. What's the value proposition? Can you, in some way, give the organization credit for the decisions that are being made? And if you're making a major change, why did the organization make that change? Whatever you do, be transparent and credible in that stuff. So if we look at Sigma, as Melissa shared, one of their goals and objectives was to increase the annual physicals and screenings by launching a new HSA. So let's break that out into what the audience needs to know, what they want to know, and why does that matter? So what do they need to know? They need to know that we're launching a new program. They want to know that it's easy and that their spouse is also eligible and they could earn up to $1,000. And of course, we want to let them know that it's important and it matters because, as we all know, identifying health risks early can lead to better health outcomes. So as you now think through your key messages, remember to consider, what does the audience need to know? What do they want to know? And why does this matter? So take the next few minutes and start writing those out. So now that we have identified our goals and objectives and begin outlining our key messages, let's look at our audience. And there's a lot of different ways that we can consider grouping our audience. We could look at some of the traditional employee demographic ways, such as location, level in the organization. Are they in front of a computer all day or on our line? We could look at age and gender, but we could also look at their benefits eligibility also. So let's look at Sigma. We know they have 5,000 employees. They have employees that are on a line. They have employees that are in office. They have a highly male population, and the majority of their employees are on their high deductible health plan. So while we know all this data about the employees, for the purpose of today's workshop, we're going to start with keeping their audience segmentation fairly simple. And we're going to talk about wired versus non-wired. So we're looking at those employees that have access to computers and are getting emails and using the internet versus those that may be working on a line. So as you start to break out your audience, consider age, connectivity, benefits eligibility, and levels. Initially, you may decide to keep the audience mix fairly simple, but later in the workshop, we're going to talk about how we can use some of the detail to break out and do segmentation and personalization.
Now that we understand who our audience is, let's talk about how we're going to communicate with them. The most recent MetLife Benefits Survey confirmed what we basically all already know, and that is we all have different preferences for how we receive communication. As communicators, this makes our job a little bit more challenging because we have to look for all the different ways that are available to us to communicate effectively. When you think about your audience, think about all of the different channels that are available to you. It could be your benefits website, it could be email, digital signage, text messaging, postcard mailers to the home, environmental signage, table tents in your break room, all different ways to communicate to your employees. So start to think through that list. We did this for Sigma, our fictitious company, and we first started with breaking their audience down into that wired and non-wired group. And we looked at all of the different channels that are available to both groups and checked those on this worksheet. You have a blank worksheet in your packet, and we would encourage you to do the same for your audience. Think about the different channels that you use regularly, what is available throughout your company or organization, and think creatively about how you might use those for benefits communication. Now we know who we're talking to and how we're going to reach them. Let's think about when we're going to communicate. There are several different ways to think about your year-round communication strategy. Maybe for your company, it works best to create a quarterly calendar. It could look like this example, where each quarter you're mapping out the key messages that you want to communicate and the ways that you're going to do that. Or maybe you want to consider a monthly calendar, where every month you have a theme and you have a topic that you want to cover. Map that out for the month and think about how you put that together for the entire year. This is an example of a calendar that we use for one of our clients. They're a little bit more sophisticated in their approach to benefits communication. So each year we put together a calendar where we have a theme each month. We look at all of the different channels that are available to us. We capture that on the calendar, how and when we're going to communicate. And we even go as far as tracking their vendor communications so that we can make sure whenever there's an opportunity to coordinate messaging with those vendors that we do so. You have a sample monthly benefits communication plan in your packet. We would encourage you to take a look at this and perhaps use this template as you start to map out your year-round strategy.
So we've now built the base plan, but we're really big believers in taking that plan and taking it one step further. And we do that through the use of segmentation and personalization. However, I think it would be helpful for us to look at all of Sigma's objectives and then look at those objectives and look at how we could segment and how we could personalize that information, and then give you an example from an actual project of how this could look like in real life. So that first step and the first strategy that we would take, if we look at that first goal of Sigma, that first goal being increasing annual physicals and screenings by launching that HSA, would be a strategy that looks at using a broad approach to educate employees, all employees, about the importance of preventive care. Our key message would be preventive care can identify health risks early, leading to better overall health outcomes. And we're going to use a variety of channels to communicate that message. But what if we take that behavioral science one step further and we use segmentation and personalizations to create action? And we use the words segmentation and personalization a lot in our communication and in our conversations. But I think it might be helpful to first define what we mean by segmentation. So for us, segmentation is dividing employees into smaller groups that share similar characteristics, whereas personalization is using the employee's data that you have to provide relevant and timely information specific to those employees. So what are some examples? Well, on the segmentation side, it could be demographics that we talked about earlier when we were talking about identifying our audience. It could be benefits eligibility. It could be the health plan choice they made, or maybe that they have visited the ER frequently, or maybe they haven't identified a PCP or haven't had a visit. On the personalization side, we could look at their choices and use that data to specifically communicate and remind them of the health plan choices. We could look at compensation data, retirement plan contribution, or other incentive completion goals. So if we go back to Sigma for a second and we say, okay, their goal was to increase annual physical and screenings by launching this new HSA incentive. If we segment the audience at the start of the plan year, we could target those employees that were in the HDHP plan. As a reminder, when we were talking earlier, about 90% of the employees were in that plan. So our strategy would be to promote the incentive for the preventive care. We would target our audience of those enrolled in the HDHP plan, and they would receive an HSA contribution. The message would be that they would receive an HSA contribution to pay for healthcare expenses. As you noticed, our first strategy is fairly broad. The second strategy, we're now narrowing in on our channels to just an email to those employees that have email and a postcard to those employees that have postcard. We're narrowing in on our channels at this point. We're only sending an email to those employees that could receive email. And because we had a high percentage of employees who were non-wired who don't use email, we're also going to supplement this with a postcard. What if we took one more step and we personalized it? So we're going to segment this audience and personalize all at the same time. So the segmentation would be after 6 months, we're going to target those who are eligible for the incentive but have not completed the annual screening. We're going to personalize it by including the dollar amount they are eligible for receiving. So we're going to fill this in on the worksheet. So reminder, our strategy is going to be that a reminder mid-year about the incentive offering. Our audience is just now narrowed even further to those that have not been screened. The key message is it's not too late. And because we're now including personalized information, we're only going to send this out to these employees via a mailer. So how could that look? This is an example of something that we've done with other clients. So you'll notice right there on the screen in this print piece, it was you've earned 0, but you're eligible for up to 500. And it gives the call to action that you still have time in the year to accomplish the incentive. We're going to run through the other 3 objectives real quick and give you an example of how Sigma could approach this. So the other goal was they wanted to effectively communicate about open enrollment. We're going to segment the audience based on the medical plan choice or benefit group that the employee is in. We're going to use the data, though, the employee's benefit elections, to personalize the information. So reminding them of what they had elected the prior year. For me, it's helpful to see a visualization of how could this strategy play out. The example on the screen shows on the left the personalized information, showing the employee what they elected. However, on the right side of the page, the rate chart, the key messages are segmented based on what the employee has elected in the prior year. Additionally, in this example, on page 1, all the key messages were segmented based on the employee group.
Next, let's look at Sigma's 3rd objective, avoidable ER utilization costs. How do we drive those down? We've had a lot of employees who have been visiting the ER for things that could easily be treated at urgent care or at a retail clinic. So we want to communicate that to employees. First, we want to look at the medical plan data and pull out those individuals who have had avoidable ER visits in the past 2 years. Next, if we want to personalize it, let's pull their zip code data and look for alternative care options in their area and list those in a communication for them. Because the employer does not have access to this personalized information, this particular communication is coming directly from the healthcare plan. Using their data, we were able to identify exactly how much the employee had spent in avoidable ER costs over the past couple of years and compare that to what they would cost if they sought care at an urgent care or retail clinic. Next, you can see the example on the left lists out those different options that are in their area. And finally, let's look at Sigma's last objective, increasing participation in their 401k match program. From a communication standpoint, we would first want to segment their message by age and current participation level. And then we can go the next step to personalize that message using salary data and their current participation level to show them exactly how much they're missing out on if they are not at the maximum match level. Here's an example. In this actual example, we took salary data and participation level and spelled out for the employee the exact amount per paycheck that they would be contributing and exactly how much per paycheck they would be receiving in the match. So for your final activity, let's think about your goals and objectives and think about how you might segment and personalize a communication campaign to help you reach that objective. Pick a topic from your list and think about what data you have available to you and how you might target specific employee populations. Don't forget your key goals and objectives, how your audience can be segmented, all of the data that you have or that your medical plan may have for you, the key messages that you want to convey, and the possible channels that you want to use. So this brings us to the end of today's workshop. Thank you so much for your participation. If you still have questions and want more tips and resources, feel free to download our online toolkit. And if you ever want to reach out to us, feel free. We would be happy to provide any advice that we can.